Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm CJ Vogel, joined by two fellas that played for the University of Texas. They used to roam the 40 acres. Now we're going to be talking about guys that are going to be roaming the secondary, the safeties. Guys back deep, obviously headlined by Jelani McDonald. There's no more Michael Taft. So who are going to be the guys that step up? Well, we got a glimpse of that late in the season against Michigan. Of course, Texas very talented in the secondary at the moment, very talented in that safety room. But who steps up and becomes those guys that Texas can rely on? The retention of Derek Williams, very important. It's going to be a big summer for Jonah Williams when he gets back to football, of course. But then you start looking around at Zealous Hicks, Jordan Johnson-Rubel, Xavier Filsaime coming off of a shoulder as well. Plenty to talk about. Marcus, I'll start with you. When you look at this safety room in particular, what's your comfortability? How confident are you in this room being once again a strength of this Texas defense?
Absolutely, man. I think, getting Jelani to return to school, I think was huge. He's a guy that, has a lot of ability, a lot of range to him, and you can use him in a number of different ways. So I feel really good about having him back there, and then finding a way to even, get Derek Williams to not officially go into the portal. That's another guy that's had some experience, will be that much further removed from his injury. I think, have that much more confidence in his ability at that point. And then to your point, CJ, you had a guy like Xavier Filsaime that had a lot of reps. It's coming off of a shoulder surgery. And so, I'm not sure how much we'll get to see him this spring. So, you certainly have, a core group of guys there that have had some experience. We're all certainly excited about Jonah Williams, but with him, kind of double timing it with baseball, you still got to kind of see how that's going to shake out. So at the very least, you have, a number of guys that will have an opportunity. I think, to your initial point, more than anything, not having someone like a Michael Taft there, it's going to be really incumbent upon these guys to figure out how they can, really become a cohesive unit and almost, have that mind meld of sorts that you had from a couple years back when it was, Taft and Makuba back there along with Jahdae Barron. And I think what'll go a long ways with that to help will be not only Will Muschamp being in the fold and the defense being called a bit differently, but Blake Gideon being back. And so he's a guy that has familiarity with a number of these, young men, especially Derek Williams. And so I think that'll go a long ways to, help him with the veterans, but then also bringing on some of the younger guys to figure out where they have some spots to land as well.
And I mentioned, how can this room get back to being a strength? I said it was a strength that towards the back end of last year, it probably wasn't, right? But in 23, 24, you saw some really solid plays from that safety room, Rod. When it comes to now molding these guys to becoming that strength of the secondary once again, what does that look like to you with no Michael Taft, who was basically your entire mouthpiece back there?
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, he's the communication center of that secondary, and Jelani McDonald. I've talked to him, and he seems like he not only is going to relish in that role, but take pride in it too. So he's going to be the guy that's expected to be the air traffic controller back there, if you will. But I think this competition at safety is so intriguing because, Jelani McDonald's the guy, right? And he's going to fit so well into Muschamp's scheme. Muschamp's going to showcase him as a blitzer. He's going to put him in the box, and then you're going to see him moved all over the place. I think it's going to be great to showcase the NFL, showcase his kind of Sunday skill set that he has. But then after that, you don't have another safety that has proven they're well-rounded. Right? Maybe feels to me, I think you're kind of another best coverage safety among this group, but I don't know how much he's improved as that alley cat that can defend the run from depth, which is basically what you need a safety to do. And can you defend the run from 12 yards deep? Because that's what I need you to do a lot of times. And you're able to come down and run that alley and take great angles to the football. Derek Williams can do that. Really good alley cat. But has he proven that he is not a liability in coverage? Which I don't know, at post injuries, he's been able to prove that. Right. So, and then there's Jonah Williams, who has the highest ceiling of anybody in that safety room. But as you pointed out, Marcus, is he focused on football? And is he that given athlete where he can, double time it and still win a starting job at safety? I don't know. He actually probably is that talented, but we don't know if that's going to happen. And then, you got guys like, Jordan Johnson-Rubel, and some of the other guys. But I think for me, because you had last year 4 safeties that had at least 200 snaps, I believe it was, 3 with 400 plus in 24, 4 with 300 plus in 23, 4 with 200 plus in 22. So you get it, right? So you need 4 safeties in your rotation, and then you narrow it down. You have those 2 that play at least 500 to 600 snaps. That's how it's gone in this season. So who are the 4? It's easy. Jelani McDonald is part of it. Xavier Filsaime, Derek Williams, I think, is part of it. And honestly, I think they want Jonah Williams to be part of that 4. Yeah. I do believe they want Jonah to be a part of that 4. Now I'm just worried about who's the most well-rounded of that group, though. And is Jonah focused enough to become the most well-rounded? Probably not. So that's the question for me this spring. That's going to be really compelling.
That was actually where I was going to go next. Is of that rotation, right? It's kind of a work in progress, especially going into the spring. How does Derek Williams look now? Is Xavier Filsaime healthy enough after undergoing shoulder surgery right after the season? Will he be a big piece or not? Look, we don't believe that there's going to be a lot of Jonah Williams due to the baseball season as well. So, hey, you're kind of in flux when it comes to safety depth, which insert Zealous Hicks. Who knows what he could do, right? He was supposed to be a senior in high school a year ago. Instead, reclassifies and rolls early. We don't see a lot of them, but was a guy who in the 2026 class was a 5-star level player. So another very talented guy who just getting ready with his body physically, getting up to speed with the game, I'm sure took a bit of time. But Rod, you said something really interesting there, and I'm going to go back to you real quick because we saw Jonah play the 5th most snaps of any safety a year ago, right? It might not feel like it. 71 obviously isn't a ton. You laid out the snap count there, but it felt like Texas wanted to get Jonah on the field, especially later in the year. Is it just as simple as, hey, whatever we can get out of this guy in the spring, we're just going to go run with it into the summer and fall camp where we really focus on getting him into this rotation more and more?
Yep, I do. I think he's so talented. I think they do want to kind of enforce, and also he's got a decision to make at one point, and if he hasn't played at all, let's go make it an easy decision for the young man. So I think he's really talented. That Texas wants him to break through with this rotation. But like you said, there's a lot of opportunity now because he's not going to be totally available for you in the spring, but I know how much they like Jonah because I love his skill set too. He's a ball hawking playmaker, got great instincts. His frame, his size, he's one of those safeties you can probably put down in the box. You can do a lot of different things with him. And I think, honestly, the truth, I'm not making this up. He might be I haven't even seen him do it. I'm guessing he might be one of your best center fielders as a safety in terms of the range he has. Why? Because come on. Not for you. So you don't really have that also in the roster. So I know they want to play him, but like you said, he's not going to be available. He's splitting time. And then you guys, Xavier Filsaime coming off the surgery. So it's just a great opportunity for guys like a Jordan Johnson-Rubel and a Zealous Hicks, because they're going to have to put you out there. Like, you're going to have to get playing time just because they're going to have snaps available. And what do you do with them if you're a JJR? What do you do with if you're a Zealous Hicks? And I love Zealous Hicks' frame too. He's also one of those freaky big safeties. Like, I was surprised when I got up next to him. I was surprised. I mean, dude looks like a linebacker.
Yep,
pretty much at safety. So if he can move well, he's a guy that I know Muschamp will just fall in love with, of all the versatility that he potentially has.
Well, and to CJ's point, that's a guy that reclassed, right? Like he started his college journey early. So, in reality, like he's, still getting caught up to speed on what the college game looks like because he should have been in high school, So I think a frame like his is really impressive. So you're right, Rod. I would love to see him step up. And even back to your point of Jonah, I do remember a handful of snaps towards the back end of the season where you'd look up and they'd have some kind of package out there with multiple DBs. And there's Jonah deep in the middle of the field, right? Yep. So, I mean, I think he's, perfectly well suited for it. And I also just want to say this, and I know neither of you are saying this, but just for our viewers, like, it's not a thing that we think there's anything with him having a lack of concentration, right? It's just the mere fact that not only do you have a safeties coach coming in and a new defensive coordinator, but you're literally, your time is divided. There's only so much you're allowed to devote to either of the two sports. So, when you're doing that, it just makes it challenging in general, but especially when you have, two prominent members of your secondary coaching staff coming in. So I think if anybody could do it, to Rod's point, it would be him. It's just the logistics of how do you work out that timing. And they have a great plan for him. You look up, you see Sark and Schloss at basketball games together. So, they're having conversations about it. And I'll tell you, the last several, women's basketball games I've seen, you'll see Jonah and a number of the football guys there together, and so I think he's just a great ambassador for the university. He has great energy about him. And he's one of those guys that on the field, he brings some of that swag and attitude. So I think they'd love to be able to get him out there. But until then, you got these other guys that are going to have opportunities at reps that you mentioned, Rod, JJR, Zealous Hicks.
Yes.
And, maybe even a couple of these freshmen, you never know. They get thrown out there and get an opportunity to make a play here and there. And when you're young, we've said it before, you don't know what you don't know. So you're just going out there and trying to kind of make a name for yourself and hoping that the coaches take notice.
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to go next, right? Because there is familiarity with Blake Gideon returning, right? He helped recruit, coach, develop a number of these guys already in the room. So that should be a plus, right? You should already be familiar with your position coach who's rejoining the staff. But for Muschamp, this is basically brand new. And so you get a clean slate when it comes to the guys that are fighting and scratching for playtime, right? And Xavier Phil-Samia, Derek Williams, a Jordan Johnson-Rubel, who Texas had to spin down to linebacker against Michigan because, they just didn't have the numbers. But with a new coordinator, and, a position coach who's 1 year removed, it's time to prove yourself once again. Is there anybody in mind specifically for either of y'all that y'all could see make that move from maybe they were – rotational piece. Maybe they were just flat out depth last year into being a larger contributor this year based off how this spring or offseason might go. Rod, I'll start with you.
Yes, certainly. I mean, that could, especially with Muschamp and, Muschamp's physical, aggressive nature. If you could go out there and really showcase your talent as a guy that can, bring force with you as a run defender at the safety position, I think that'll make a difference in Muschamp's mind. So I think I'm with you. A guy like Zealous Hicks is probably, to me, the one who stands among the guys we're talking about, kind of outside those top 3 or 4 have already not proven themselves, but have already separated just a little bit. He's the one that may be able to close some ground, I think. I'm with you. I like the fact that, he was an early enrollee, like you said, a guy who had reclassified, I should say. And I actually got a chance to meet the young man. So I'm a little bit biased here because I just recency bias. I just got a chance to meet him for the first time a couple of weeks ago. And I was really impressed. He has not lost his confidence. And that's one thing I think is key for these young guys, man. Just because you ain't playing, don't lose confidence. He has not lost confidence. And the frame is crazy. It's just freaky that guy looks like a straight up linebacker who moves really well. So I'm gonna go out there with Zealous Hicks and from the state of Georgia, right? He's from Georgia, is he not? Mm-hmm. So he told me, he's like, oh, I've been knowing Muschamp. I knew about Muschamp for a while. Because I was like, oh, I didn't realize that he's a Georgia guy. So Muschamp probably had already been reaching out. So he and Muschamp, they already got a pre-existing relationship kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Marcus, anybody come to mind for you?
That was going to be where I go. I would love to kind of diversify this a little more if I could, but he's the one that I've always been most intrigued with. I was hoping maybe we'd get a little glimpse in the bowl game, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. But he's the one that has the traits and the characteristics that are just a little different than everybody else from that physical stature. And for him to still be so young, this is, now his second off season in the program. So I think, for me, I would love to be able to see him take a step because, as we mentioned, you're going to have some reps that are available not only from what have been vacated and what's left from the room, but then also, having the young man, Phil-Samia, that, has had the shoulder surgery. So they're probably not going to have him going full bore, this spring, even if he is able to get back. So that's an opportunity right there. That's at the very least, someone that's vying to be in that too deep. And I certainly think that, he could be a person that could do that.
Of course, there's going to be 2 freshmen join this room for now, right? We'll have to wait and see if Texas adds a grad transfer or someone to this room later on in the spring. But 2 freshmen that we know of. And of course, we talked about it when we discussed corners. There could be some position versatility, flexibility, whatever you want to call it. With some of these younger guys, but Yaheem Riley coming in as a safety, Teray Davis coming in as a safety. That's where they will start. I'll start with Teray Davis. Just real quick, you turn on his tape, you see him playing the football time and time again. You mentioned playing center field. This was a guy that doubled as a wide receiver, put up gaudy numbers his senior year in Colorado as well. Received all sorts of recognition when it came to his play his senior year. That's someone that, look, I don't know how quick he'll have a path to the field, but we've seen freshmen make instant impacts in the Texas secondary plenty of times over the last year. So that's someone to watch. And, of course, Shaheem Riley, who more physical than I think he gets credit for.
Yeah.
When he gets that frame right, I think, that's someone you're going to look at and say he is playing the run. He might spin down to maybe a big nickel star position as well. So we'll see. But altogether, this safety room from top to bottom has plenty of pieces. This spring will be, how do they fit? How do they work well with one another? Who becomes that big vocal mouthpiece? My money's on Jelani McDonald, but we'll have to wait and see for that. Altogether, guys, thank you very much for your time and always discussing Texas football. That will do it for our safety outlook for the spring and going into the rest of winter conditioning. So for Rod, for Marcus, I'm CJ Vogel. This has been On Texas Football. Until next time, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome.